The first thing that your thesis statement should do is it should forecast the specifics of your paper. So you want to do this in a way that is sophisticated and ties in some of the things that you'll be talking about, some of the main themes or main issues that your paper discusses. So if we take a look at this example, we have a thesis statement that needs work, which is in this paper I will discuss state fair food. Now this needs a little bit of work because first of all it's not a sophisticated tie-in, it's just a kind of thrown out there statement of this paper talks about X. And along with that, it also doesn't forecast specifics. So we know you're talking about state fair food, but we don't know what. So in the revision, we've added some specific issues that the paper would cover. So the revision, one thing state fair foods have come to be known for is their diverse food lists. While some state fair foods are created for shock value, many others are attempting to offer specialized cultural cuisine. So in this we know you're talking about state fair foods, but we also know that you're talking about the diversity that you can find there, some of the shocking state fair foods, so people can expect to see something about deep fried Oreos and deep fried Snickers and those sorts of things. And then you're also going to talk about cultural foods in here. So this is a better thesis statement than the first one because it gives you specifics to look for. The second thing is we need to avoid oversimplification, and this can look like a lot of different things. So in the case of the one that needs work, we've got excuse me, we've got good versus bad. And really what you're trying to do, especially for this assignment, is avoid having an essay that looks at the pros versus the cons, right? So that might be one paragraph, pros versus cons of something. That might be one paragraph in your essay, but we need your thesis statement to forecast things that go beyond that because we're trying to look at these different issues in multiple ways and from different perspectives, different angles. So when we have something that says travel experiences with food can be good or bad, I don't know if your essay is focusing on travel or if it's focusing on food, because they're both kind of just thrown in there. And also, I don't know what you mean by good or bad. Do you mean like you've got food poisoning off of something and we're talking about health concerns with food when you're traveling? Or do you mean you are talking about how people might not like the different foods when they travel to new places? I don't know what that means. And it oversimplifies a topic. So there's lots of different things that you can talk about in terms of travel experiences and food. And so we want to see that come through in your thesis statement. So the revision points out some of these things. It points out different types of travel experiences and it names some. So you've got the food specific one, but you can also talk about the other ones too. And then, excuse me, it talks about how in recent years, there have started to be more travel experiences that emphasize food. So there, we don't have something that's just pros and cons. We don't have just good or bad. We know we're talking about a lot of different things, a lot of different types of travel experiences, and their different emphases on food. And if we think back to our first issue of forecasting specifics, this one does a good job in that because we know the three types of travel experiences we're going to talk about, and we know that they're going to emphasize different food components, so we know that we're going to talk about that as well. Lastly, we can include statements of fact, but we still have to have a claim in there. So we want to make sure that the thesis statements that we're writing have a balance of both. So this one is okay, the needs work one. It says romanticized in fiction to give us something to dream about. But it's really all all claim, and we don't know where your fact is. So someone could argue that food isn't romanticized in fiction, that food is overlooked in fiction. And so we don't know where this statement is is coming from. And so for the revision, we've kept that, but we've also backed it up with the fact that we're going to be talking about critical scholars of literature, and how they're studying food and how they can view food within literature to help us view it in real life in these three different ways: how we look at food, food inequalities in society, and food production. So again, looking back to our original 2 points, this forecasts the specifics. We're going to be talking about the ways we look at food inequalities, food production, and we're going to be looking at that in the scope of literature. And so we know kind of where this is going. It also avoids simplification, so we're not talking about is or isn't food romanticized. We're not talking about whether or not that's good or bad. We're looking at it in terms of these 3 different things. So you really want to make sure that you are avoiding those pros and cons. So if we look at an example, this one needs work. The authors try to teach us about the dangers of cotton candy. This is too vague because, first of all, we've got one very vague, very broad, specific, that's an oxymoron, I know, but a very broad point that we're going to talk about, I should say, but it doesn't tell us anything else. And so we also don't know who these authors are. Are these food scientists? Are they chefs? Are they food bloggers? Who are the authors? Where are we getting this research from? And what is the claim? Okay, and so in the revision, in light of overwhelming evidence of cotton candy's lack of nutritional value, some chefs are trying to find ways to make this snack healthier while maintaining its flavor. Now, this still isn't the best thesis statement, but it's getting there because it does these few things. First of all, it gives us a context that we're looking at. So we've got this lack of nutritional value. So it's not just, it doesn't just give us that vague word of dangers, right? It talks about a specific issue that we're going to be looking at. And then it forecasts the topics. So we know we're going to talk about nutrition. We know that we're going to talk about experimentation because it talks about the chefs trying to find new ways to make the snack healthier, and we're going to talk about flavor, right? Because that's one of the things that they're looking for. So we know that we're going to talk about all of those things, and it avoids pros and cons. It doesn't talk about whether this is good or bad. It doesn't talk about the benefits versus the risks. It talks about these couple of different things. Still needs a couple of tweaks to add a claim, a very specific claim, and maybe forecast another topic, but this one is getting there. Lastly, I want to talk about outlines. So there are lots of different ways to make an outline, and some of these are going to seem very familiar to you. But when we make outlines, these should help you see how the small details figure into the whole project. And these can be lists, mind maps, sketch notes, project boards, or other things that help you visualize how your project is going to be set out. So let's take a look at a few of those.